Good afternoon, everyone. The Ranter is now to go into his review of the Democratic debate. And from my point of view, this one was actually better than the ones that came previously. Uh, it seems that the issues presented, they were answering more concise, and there wasn't too many back and forth moments, or wasn't a Julian Castro moment as he went after Joe Biden. But a few things did happen. When it comes to Elizabeth Warren, we have now welcomed her into the frontrunner list because she is the one that was mostly gone after. The reason being is her answer, which wasn't much of an answer to how she's going to pay for her healthcare plan. Now, Elizabeth Warren is one of these people who actually will come out and she will present her policy and what she's going to do and this and that, but there's some things that she's just kind of hesitant as to how to explain, including how you pay for her version of healthcare and what she proposes to do while people are already on healthcare via the Affordable Care Act and their own private insurance. This is those moments is when Bernie Sanders' plan, his honesty upon the raising of taxes is actually very appreciated for a lot of us who understand this concept is and from an adult manner, because he explains it, and I've talked about this in previous videos. He explains it that your taxes will go up, but cost the cost in front of the doctor goes down. So what you're going to pay for a year is medical services at a far less cost for the price of the tax goes up. And if more people go into this tax, how big is tax is going to be? I mean, I kind of see it as one of those things where you're hesitant to getting into it, you're hesitant to get into it, but once you get into it, and once we do the first initial payment of this tax, and then it becomes an annual thing, you will forget that it's even there. And you'll just rest assured of what medical coverage you'll be able to get from it afterwards. So there's that. And Elizabeth Warren didn't want to say that this could lead to raised taxes. I don't know, I guess for me, it just seems to be one of those nebulous things where you don't want to explain, how something's going to cost. You want to do the pie in the sky stuff. You want to get people, emotionally invested, but you don't really want them to know what the nuts and bolts is going to be, because that might seem that they have to shell out more money. You may have to shell out more money, but it's a trade-off. Is that either you're going to shell out more money in annual tax, or you're going to shell out more money every time you have to go to the doctor. And you want to avoid that, then you don't go to the doctor. Because we're in the situation, no matter how good the Affordable Care Act was for some, other people aren't able to get on it. And people still can get jerked around by their private insurance. So you have this unfortunate situation, we all know this, of people who are trying to live their lives, but their lives are having the balance of between, should I get the medication for my constant pain or constant ailment, or shall I get food for the week? This is not a balance that anyone needs to go through, but this is what people are living with. This is what I had to live with a few instances throughout my life so far. And I would rather not have to go through that over and over again. So that's kind of a enlightened self-interest. But I wouldn't want anyone else to go through this either. So if this is the type of plan that could alleviate that, it might sting from the beginning, but in the end it smooths out, then I think it's worthwhile to do. So that's my stance impromptu of Medicare for All. As far as the winners and losers of the Democratic debate, I had a running scorecard of 3 people, and throughout the night, though it was a little shaky at some points, my winners was Andrew Lang, Amy Klobuchar, and Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I am very impressed with Andrew Lang. Like every time they come to him for a question about what the question is, he always feels comfortable in answering it. He doesn't seem to hesitate. He doesn't search for words like I'm doing, but he always has something triggered. Always has something to explain to you, what he wants to do or what he believes, and this is the steps of how he got to there. Um, but at the same time, he addresses what he's saying like he's not talking down to you. He's not he's not trying to elaborate with he's not trying to elaborate what he's saying in, like in a manner where you have to think about, what do you mean by that? I mean, he's not showing you pie charts. He's explaining it to you as someone who as someone who's not being professory about it. He's not, this is how we're going to do this. Now pay attention, children. He's not doing any of that. So that scores points. Um, I said this in the last time. My only thing about Andrew Yang is that, and I'm glad he didn't do it this time around, but he had done it in the last few debates. Um, he's an intelligent, successful guy, and if he became president, he would make a great president. He doesn't need the Asian jokes. We get it. You're Asian. It's great. There's no problem with it. You are looking at your credentials, but I guess there is a. I guess he's trying to get to the segment of our population who just seems hesitant of people who are a little bit different than them. So he pulls out these like self-deprecating Asian jokes. Like the last one I remember is that when they were talking about healthcare in the last debate, he says, "Well, I'm Asian. I know doctors." Maybe that's funny the first time around, but it's not needed. You don't need it. I mean, it's 2019. If people are going to be that sensitive towards, you know, the demographics, and I don't know what to tell you. That's pretty sad of us. Um, Amy Klobuchar, I always liked. She always seems to get lost in the. She always seems to get lost in the background because people are too concentrated on the front runners, or the people who make the headlines, or people who just say what they will. But Amy is always steadfast in the strength of her argument in any policy, and she went after Elizabeth Warren too. She was one. That was the thing that people took notice of her is her going after Elizabeth Warren upon her lack answer about healthcare. But she didn't do it mean. She didn't do it like gotcha. She didn't none of that shit. She was like, she was friendly about it, and that's actually the good way of doing it. There's a concept called the happy warrior, and she is really the happy warrior on this. So, in the meaning of, it's she's not coming at this like the gloom and doom, like we have this presidential election, is make or break. We're here to save the world. No, she's not doing any of that. She has her arguments with the other. She has her arguments with the other candidates, but it's always with a smile. It's always friendly. It's always respectful. She has her arguments with Donald Trump. Obviously, they all do. We all do. But she's not coming at it as that as I would. Like he's a scumbag simpleton. She didn't do that. That's why she's running for president, and I'm doing this. But she's the type of voice that we actually need. Um, I try to temper our win in the midterms with the knowledge that even if the country is going far right, or in the perception because of Trump being president, and the Republican Party just rallies around him at the detriment of their own word and policy and religious belief and their families maybe, you can't quite go far left. I mean, we are, like I said many times, we are a country of compromise. That was our great genius. that made us a marvel of the world. That we could take this, we find commonality, and then we move forward. But in this polarized, political, partisan bullshit world of our United States at this moment, where we have one camp, never the twain shall meet, what used to work was moderates and centrists that understood the concept of compromise and understood the concept of progress. You take something, etc. We can't seem to bring ourselves to do that because we have to either be one camp or the other camp, and it's all or nothing. All or nothing leads to nothing. And if you think you're going to get all, that won't last. So someone like Amy Klobuchar, who can exist in the middle, that can make the compromises with Republicans and Democrats, that can bring that Midwestern voice. And, that's once again one of those political buzzwords over the Midwest. I wanted to make sure you reach out to those people that it seems to be a difficulty to do for at least the Democratic Party, when they should be trying. I've said this again. I've said this multiple times. They have to go everywhere. You can't just hang back in your power base and just speak to only the people that agree with you. You have to speak to everyone, even if they don't agree with you. You have to make the attempt, because if you're not there, then they can scapegoat you because of your absence. They can just assume the worst because of your absence. Amy Klobuchar can bridge that divide and bring about policies that both sides either can agree or disagree, but at least they'll listen to her. So that's why I always liked Amy, and I'm glad Amy got more exposure in this debate, and maybe people will start looking her up and researching her and seeing what she's all about. And maybe, she's not flashy, but we don't need flashy. We have a neon orange flash in the White House that doesn't know shit. Let's have people that knows what they're talking about. Finally, for the last one is Mayor Pete Buttigieg that I've been liking last few debates, and nearly every time he opens his mouth, whenever there's a moment of tension in the debates, he kind of brings the common sense and brings the temperature down. And that's another thing that we need. It's mirrors that with Amy Klobuchar, that he just wants to come up and explain to you, not talk down to you, not saying things Andrew Yang, not trying to talk down to you, but tells you what these policies, tells you what he wants to do in a level of someone who is your buddy. When they used to say about G.W. Bush is that he's the kind of guy you want to have a beer with. Buttigieg is like that in a sense, with the exception of he doesn't need to have a beer to have a conversation with you. He brings it down to earth. It brings down the drama and just brings you down to the nuts and bolts of what's going on. And that's, again, someone who brings commonality and clarity should be considered vital in this day and age, where we have people thundering on while being obscure and vague and cryptic and and tells you to figure it out, but then make sure the puzzle pieces are not there so you can never figure it out. He won't do that. So I like that. When it comes to the various moments of what's going on in the debate, Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke's back and forth was interesting. I feel sorry for Beto O'Rourke. This is not his time. He's one of these, he went damn close of getting that Senate seat and was short on it, but to being able to get a Senate seat as a Democrat in Texas and was close, that speaks volumes. Because when you think of it in a long-term game, every little incremental success, even if you don't win it, matters. it shouldn't have been close. Even if it is Ted Cruz, it should not have been close for Ted Cruz to beat Beto, but it was in Texas. That's amazing, and that brings a little question of what will happen in 2020 next time around. But I feel sorry for Beto because he has. I think he was very much affected by what happened in El Paso, in Odessa. I think he is affected by the fact that he's only pulling single digits and low single digits. That he is getting desperate. It's one thing to be emotional. I should know. When if you've been watching this, I kind of thunder on and do my own ranting, which is the point. But you can't go overboard. You can't like, oh hell yeah, we're gonna take their guns. No, you got to be a little bit more nuanced than simply going, I'm going to go door to door and take people's guns, or I'm going to have them buy back their guns. We understand where he's coming from with this. You know, it comes from the position of someone who feels that he's been hurt, his hometown was being hurt, and this is a lunacy, this gun issue. We understand that. But still, you shouldn't penalize responsible gun owners by telling them they need to give up their guns. That they only take them out to the range, they only take them out hunting, or they keep them in the house to defend their families. And I'm talking about the responsible gun owners. I'm not talking about those people who like strap on their long rifle and go to Walmart and strut around. Because yeah, maybe we should have a conversation about those people at some point. But not everyone is going to go out and do evil with this. I mean, I'm nowhere near a gun advocate. I did the March for Our Lives in D.C. I had a rather interesting sign. I'll post it sometime. But it can't be. It's not a simple matter of just like take the gun. No. Now those people who hear this and threaten Beto over, oh, here's my gun. Yeah, we might have to question you because don't say that. I mean, that makes us worry about you, even in jest, because you're holding a lethal weapon and you're threatening someone's life over a lethal weapon. There are other things around that can be done in terms of guns. I mean, there are companies that are not selling their guns or even destroying their stock of guns. You know, guns being in the populace, that's Pandora's box. That's already open. The best things you can do is have the conversation, not have the conversation sabotaged by the NRA, and go after gun manufacturers and make punitive consequences for those who lend their guns out to people who then those people become nut bars and then shoot people up. So there's that. And the other thing that Beto did recently was having the assertion that churches should lose their tax exemption over having their tax exemption taken over because of the church's stances on LGBTQ people and same-sex marriage. I don't know what to tell you people. These are churches. Churches should not bow to any political point of view. Church, I mean, I understand the point. I understand that we all should like get along here, and churches should advocate unequivocal love, and that should include same-sex marriages and the LGBTQ community. But unfortunately, that's not really going to happen. And these little, you know, these these clusters of people that goes to these churches who want to pray the way they want to pray and believe what they want to believe, you know, they shouldn't be penalized for their belief. You know, as long as a belief doesn't hurt anybody. I am not one of these people that believe that, let's say, bakeries should not bake a cake for a gay couple going to a wedding and saying that's their religious belief, because I tend to believe that when that's the environment of business, and all that matters really is that you getting the money and then providing the service. That is open for argument, but you should not, barge into somebody's church and telling them that their Bible is a lie or what they believe is wrong inside the confines of their place of worship. If you want to get into the intelligent argument, then have it outside the rest of the world. You know, I always laugh when someone who does oppose gay marriage or opposes gay's existence bring up Leviticus and bring up the quote from Leviticus, because then I have to laugh because I go, well, is Leviticus a Chinese food menu for you? Because if you're following what Levi is saying in there, surely when you go to church, you have little packets of salt to present to God, right? Right. And I have to notice what you're wearing because Levi didn't think that people should be mixing fabrics. Is that all one fabric? Hmm? Or my favorite of what Levi was saying, that anyone who has a woman in their house um, needs to throw away their furniture every time they sit on a piece of furniture when they're menstruating. So you want to bring up Leviticus. Well, then let's bring up all Leviticus. And then when you hear that Leviticus might not be all there, then that little argument about man should not lie with a man, that kind of loses something when you're not taking salt to church and you're not throwing away furniture every month. But there's that. But that does not mean you can go barge into a church and then just say, "Oh, Leviticus is a lie." No, no, it's the church. Leave them alone. As long as they're not hurting anybody, and this is something that they're using in their own belief system, then it's fine. So Beto is overstepping there. But again, the reaction to Beto, like for instance, like Ben Shapiro, whatever reasonable things that he could say that would make sense, he takes it 10 steps across the dance floor when he talks about, oh, when it comes to my door, I have my gun. Fuck you. You know what? Why can't we be adults in our conversations, in our interactions, in our debates, and just explain your side, you might agree, you might disagree, and then move along. But Benny, who wants to make sure he keeps up his fan base and making sure people go click 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 onto his site because, oh my god, what did Ben Shapiro just say? Let's go find out. Yeah, I understand. I understand. I had I could at one time at a good day have 1 dozen people watching this. That's fine. I'm not actively promoting this or anything. This is more my catharsis of venting out. But there are people out there who take what people say too far. We already seen that with our dear chosen one president, how he can inspire people to do really, really seriously evil shit. And he's not intending to do that, but because he is reckless and he's loose with what he says, that people who are susceptible to involuntary suggestion will go, oh, well, they're the enemies of the state, and they're attacking my dear president. I better go mail some bombs in to his rivals. Or if I was a Coast Guard lieutenant, I'll go stockpile some weapons. Or even worse, I'll drive 9 hours from my house to a major town in Texas because I want to shoot me some invading Mexicans. In my manifesto, you'll read all about it. See, incitement doesn't require someone directly telling you to your face to do something. Incitement doesn't even necessarily involve the intent of telling someone to do something. All it is that you run a mantra and you get people nodding their heads. And what did I say? You get something intolerable that cannot be condoned. You get it condoned. You get it tolerated. You get it accepted in a manner. And then you have the follow through. And some pretty awful stuff can be brought up. And a reasonable person at the onset will go, no, Jesus Christ, no, come on. But then you hear it enough times and you get other people around you bobbing their heads in agreement, and you go, oh, maybe there's some merit in this whole enemy of the people thing, until you're plastering your little van with Trump memorabilia and trying to put bombs into packages. See, that is the extreme level of irresponsibility and recklessness with a fan base that is that loyal to you. Thank God Ben Shapiro is nowhere near that. Furthermore. Alright, time in for a moment. I am going to go out for it is my birthday. So I'll be back, and you'll see a little time difference. There'll probably be darker over there. My hair might not be, all kept in, but more ranting will be coming. So it'll be a few seconds for you, be maybe an hour or so for me. Time in. Now, geez, it does seem that time had passed, now didn't it? Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, Beto and Buttigieg. When I was talking the last time around on Beto's a little bit of an overreach when it comes to what churches should do, what churches should not do. For us on my side of the aisle that really wants to keep the separation from church and state and church and public schools, that we want to make sure one thing does one thing, the other thing does the other thing. If we want to have the respectful stance of, let schools do what schools do, and we should let churches do what churches do. And that's pretty much my take on that. What else was going on with the debate? We had the obligatory conversation about impeachment. As I've been saying the last few videos, I don't think presidential candidates should weigh in on this. Acknowledge that it's the right thing to do for the Congress to go and do these impeachment inquiry. But as I say, as if I was a presidential candidate, as far as I'm concerned, I want to beat him. I don't want him impeached. I want to personally beat him in the polls. Because you should want to do that, and you should want to show the alternatives. The other thing about what was going on, especially when I saw Tom Steyer on there, I understand that Tom Steyer spent the last 2 years of his wealth putting out ads for impeaching the president. That's great and all, but that also presents you to being like someone who has one issue, and that issue is removing the president. So once you do that, theoretically speaking, once you beat him, then what? Was that the only reason you were running for president? Well, you got 4 years, you better come up with something. And so I want people to not only say that, yeah, we want to beat Donald Trump and want to remove him from office, but we actually have a plan of what we want to do as president. See, I kind of see that as kind of important. Anyway, and then we got into the Syrian thing. Um, Here's the thing when it comes to the Turkish invasion and what's going on in Syria and the Kurds. It is not all that. It's not all that simple to say that that we abandon the Kurds and the Turks are slaughtering the Kurds, right? It's if you put a little bit more deep dive into what's going on, you see that the Kurds are not just one big monolithic group. That there's a lot of subsections in it. There are some groups within it that are a little bit not wearing the white hat in terms of being righteous here. There are groups within that are very militant, very violent, and who do violence to their own people for not following what they want to do. See, there's certain groups that want to create their own sovereign land. Timeout. All right, time in again. And there was, like I said, there were certain groups that want to make their own Kurdistan. They want to make their own sovereign place for themselves. And there are people who just are content to being the minority population in whatever country they're in. And these two philosophies do get into conflict. It's not simple. And the more you read into it, the more you look into it, the more you get more and more, disillusioned upon how to feel about the Turkish invasion and us sidestepping away and what happens with the Kurds. Because the Kurds have its own violent section among them and that are not what the right term is. That is not as righteous as we are led to believe they are. But here's the thing about it. Time and again. And here's the thing about it. Regardless of how a certain group that allies with us are, we tend to have this thing where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And this is a Cold War policy that we've been having for decades and decades. We have the tendency to ally with people who is against a common enemy of ours, or at least a satellite of the enemy of ours. And while we have this alliance, we kind of turn a blind eye to whatever they are doing on their own. We do this with these certain groups within the Kurds. We did this with the South Vietnamese. We did this with Iraq because we sided with Iraq against Iran during the Iran-Iraq War. So we have this thing that we'll use our allies depending upon how supportive they are of our interests with their own efforts and their own lives, and in exchange for that, we'll ignore what they're actually doing to their own people or to others. But I'm on two ways of this, no matter how, even with this revelation of what these groups actually do. And however they either fight for us or they fight for themselves, but they happen to be aligned with us, they're still nonetheless fighting for us. Even if they're not really doing that as a motivation. You see, because regardless of their motivations of them fighting ISIS, that kept us from fighting ISIS directly. Uh, and again, said in the last video, the the actual death toll of American troops in the theater of Syria is is extremely low compared to the deaths of Kurdish fighters who are actually doing the fighting. And no matter how bad these groups are within the Kurds, to themselves and to others, how much that people will describe them even as terrorists, our military on the ground is reporting that they say they feel ashamed for betraying them and abandoning them and sidestepping away under orders while the Turks roll in. And people who research this, that go deep dive into this, like my friend on here, who also has his own YouTube site, and sorry, he did a really deep dive in this. He has a lot of information, and I don't always agree with him, and I'm kind of hazy on agreeing with him. But there's no question that he knows what he's talking about. My counter argument is that we're in the United States, and we can gather the knowledge, we can research this. It's fine. But our soldiers who are in country are on the ground, and I'm pretty sure they know as much as we do, or obviously more. And they feel like they're betraying the Kurds, and they feel like they're abandoning an ally, regardless of what the motivations of our ally is doing. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of like on the fence about this. And as such, I still think that it is actually kind of questionable how we found ourselves via our president pulling ourselves out, especially since this comes on the heels of the Ukrainian investigation and all the drama that caused from that, and then we got to do this. And just for people to understand, this Syrian pullout is not like a sudden thing. This was something that they were talking about for months and months. General Mattis actually resigned because of this push to get ourselves out of Syria, because he understood that this would be problematic. And since he couldn't convince the president not to do this, he felt he could no longer fulfill his role within his administration, so he resigned. Other people also resigned over this. People are outraged over this. As of today, the House voted to condemn the president over his removal of, or at least our standing down of our troops in Syria during the Turkish invasion, by overwhelming margins, both Republicans and Democrats, bipartisan, 350 so votes over 60. That's amazing. Or 340, because it's like I don't know, because the body is only 400. But that's amazing. Now they're wanting to do sanctions on Turkey over their invasion. It's kind of hypocritical that at least the president, it's hypocritical of the president to jump on this bandwagon of sanctions, since he's the one that gave the green light for the Turks to invade. He sashayed us out of the way for them to do so. And we're going to rapidly abandon our bases, which Russians are now going to go into. We had 50 nuclear weapons stored in Turkey. That now we're gonna have to negotiate that back. So they talked about that. They all roundly had the same opinion that it was wrong to do so. The only caveat is I think Tulsi Gabbard said the same thing. However, she said that she brought it right around to that we shouldn't be doing like these regime change wars and so forth, which you expected her to do so because she is so friendly with Assad. So She says that he's not a war criminal, even though he uses conventional weapons and chemical weapons on his own people. But we'll leave that aside, won't we? But other than that, there isn't too much that really went on in the Democratic debate that was unexpected. Um, the one thing, there was also people there that like Tom Steyer. I think I mentioned this before, that was essentially he's only there just to go against Trump, and he doesn't really have too many things in terms of a platform to being president. He does pays the same lip service about going after the tax cut and not giving billionaires like himself a free ride. So we've heard that stuff before. It's nice, but it's also talking points. Um, Cory Booker. Cory Booker and Julian Castro is just in so much in the background of this. It's not even funny. I don't even remember some of the things that they were talking about. However, with Cory Booker, he did make up the good point of that, y'all should not be sniping against each other on the Democratic field. You have a common enemy here. You have a common point of focus, which is Trump. And going back and forth isn't helping anybody. I know there's some people who are desperate, in the single digits, and he's in the single digits too. But at least for him, he tries to inject a vial of decency in all this. One more pause. Time in. So not really much to say about the debate beyond that. As I said a minute ago, or from your point of view a few seconds ago, Cory Booker had that one moment of just reminding people that we should not be sniping against each other as Democrats. So it's nice to bring the civility to it. It's almost up there on par with Buttigieg and his common sense. One last thing to say about this, and I may do another separate video on it, but Hunter Biden finally did an interview explaining what was going on. And again, he didn't do anything wrong, nothing illegal. The only thing he regrets is that this would affect his father's presidential bid, and that this doesn't look politically good, and that people could use that on him. So here's the thing on this: when he did his interview, Ronnie McDaniel, who's the chairwoman of the RNC, put her 2 cents into this. Rand Paul has been going on TV and putting his 2 cents on this against him, and Don Jr. and Eric Trump is also voicing their opinions on this and how bad this nepotism is. So I went and tweeted them, all of them together, and so Romney McDaniel, the niece of Mitt Romney, Rand Paul, the son of Ron Paul, Don Jr., and Eric Trump, the sons of Donald Trump. Yeah, tell me how bad nepotism is. Tell me how using the name of a family member to further your own financial existence is. Right? Tell me how bad Hunter Biden is doing the exact same goddamn thing that you're doing. And all those people who decide that, oh, this is such a scandal that he's doing, how he shouldn't get a free ride, how dare you defend him? They're doing exactly the same thing. And they're doing it for far much more money than he is, and continuing to do so. But it's bad because Hunter was doing this, right? So Hunter is going to step down from the board of a Chinese business that, of course, he got on the board's name because of the name Biden. That has never happened in the history of wealthy people who have children, that their children never go and tag along on the family name. That has never happened before in the history of man. Right? So it's vastly hypocritical to hear people who do that saying boo to him. Still no proof of wrongdoing that Hunter did. And in fact, the only wrongdoing that seems to be happening is on the effect of Rudy Giuliani and his associates. From him falsifying stationery with fake White House logos to pass conspiracy theories to state as if it was official information, to his two cronies now getting arrested, to them underneath this expose into Hunter and this gas company of them trying to buy the gas company. Right? Yeah, the little conspiracy is kind of unraveling in their faces. And now we got people who are testifying in defiance of the Trump administration trying to gag them, saying how, oh yeah, it was a quid pro quo, and how John Bolton, who is no friend of any liberal, no liberal would ever call him a friend, saying that he didn't want to be part of the Ukrainian drug deal, as he referred to it, and referred to Rudy Giuliani as a hand grenade. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, this is, for relatively speaking, a short one, since it's like only going to be 47, 48 minutes long. But yeah, I am going to resume my birthday and being 41 for the rest of my day. But I should be back at some point because Ranter rants and his urge to rant is always rising. On a side note, for the purposes of me doing this on YouTube, I better come up with other things to talk about because at some point Trump is going to leave. Either that or he's going to become a dictator and my opposition will become an underground and then I'll have to run from the black baggers. So maybe I'll talk about wrestling or movies or D&D or something. But y'all have a good night. I'm going to try to have a good night. And I'll talk to you later.